Howdy guys, and welcome back to the channel. I've been doing this series over the last couple of months where I take a look back at the movies released 10 years ago. I've had a lot of fun in that series, kind of taking a look back at movies that maybe I forgot about, movies that I used to love, and today I'm talking about September 2013. Like the last two videos, I'm going to go in chronological order, and that is going to start with Riddick, the third movie in the, Chronicles of Riddick trilogy starring Vin Diesel. Now, I didn't see this movie coming out. It got middle of the road critic reviews. I think it's sitting at a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, but from what I could see, for whatever reason, I thought that this movie was a big budget film, but it was only produced for like 38 million bucks. Shows what I know. I don't really know much about the movie other than the main character's name is Riddick, but it was produced for about 38 million bucks and it made almost 100 million in the box office. So part of me is kind of surprised that they haven't produced a fourth movie in the franchise. While I was prepping for this video, I did take a look and I saw that they've been developing one since basically this movie came out and it just hasn't come to fruition. I guess Vin is just really busy with Fast and Furious right now, but as of 2022, I think they have writers on it and they're still planning on doing it just whenever Vin's available. But then on the same day, we had August Osage County come out, the film based off of the 2007 book about a dysfunctional family, and that's about what I know other than it has a really stacked cast. I mean, you had Meryl Streep and Julia Roberts both getting nominated for Oscars here. You also had Benedict Cumberbatch, Ewan McGregor in supporting roles, along with a ton of other actors that I'm not naming. And for whatever reason, I always associate this movie with the movie This Is Where I Leave You, which came out a year later after this one, and I didn't particularly like that movie. It seemed like really any movie about a dysfunctional family. It's got a whole cast of characters in there, a bunch of actors that you know, but it doesn't really seem like the audience bid on this one. It only made $74 million in the box office off of a budget of $37 million, so they probably did get a return on this, and ultimately it seems like one of those movies that served as sort of Oscar bait that didn't quite bite, but they were able to get nominations for Streep and Roberts. But for me personally, I don't know how you guys feel. Whenever Streep gets nominated, don't get me wrong, she's one of the best actors alive. I'm just kind of like, of course she got nominated there. You know, she's a name that the Academy likes. I mean, how are we going to justify that she got nominated for Into the Woods? But anyway, August Osage County came out on the same day as Riddick back in September 2013. And now following that up, we had The Family, a movie about a mobster played by Robert De Niro, with his wife, I believe, is played by Michelle Pfeiffer, and they have to go into the witness protection program, I think. I saw it a few years ago while I was recovering from a surgery, and honestly, it was more painful than the surgery for me. This movie's not good at all. It just had so much potential with Robert De Niro playing a mobster. I mean, anytime you hear that, it's bound to be in your good graces automatically. And I mean, you have Michelle Pfeiffer in there as well. I believe Diana Grown is her name. She was an up-and-coming star at the time. She played the daughter in the movie. I forget who played the son, but man, this movie was just such a letdown. But now getting into the better side here. The first three were kind of hard. The next three are going to be pretty good. We have Insidious Chapter 2. And I remember I went and saw this whenever I came out with a group of friends. I hadn't seen the first Insidious, and it was the first James Wan movie I ever saw. And at the time, I thought the movie was okay for the most part, but I knew stylistically I really appreciated it because it really wasn't like any horror movie I had seen up to that point, because I hadn't seen the first Conjuring, and I just remember sitting there and thinking, man, this movie may not be for me, but I can really appreciate the creative way that this is shot. It's not like a terrible movie. It's not a bad movie. I wouldn't say it's up there with one of my favorite horror movies ever, but I remember having a good time. It was one of those horror movies where I wasn't necessarily scared whenever I watched it. I was more interested in what the filmmaker was going to do next. And James Wan, I hope you come back from the Aquaman franchise soon and produce another horror movie. I think you're one of the most unique filmmakers out there right now, and you specifically cater to horror very well for me. I actually really enjoyed Malignant that came out a couple years ago. I know that was pretty divisive, but I thought it was just so creative. I think this guy, he just has a very creative mind. He thinks of shots that no one else would, and Insidious Chapter 2 is the first example of that for me. Then I believe on the same day we had Enough Said, which was the last film by James Gandolfini, the actor who played Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. He tragically passed away, I believe, the summer before this movie came out, and it's a romantic comedy starring him and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, directed by actually the director of You Hurt My Feelings this year, Nicole Holofcener. I probably just butchered that name. But yeah, very heartfelt romantic comedy. James Gandolfini, he leaves us off with a fantastic performance. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is always good. I have yet to see a bad performance by her. But yeah, it's too bad we haven't gotten many more movies from this director. I know that she's been getting steady work in Hollywood as a writer, producer. She directed a movie in between this one and You Hurt My Feelings. But I would really love to see her tone, her taste put onto screen more often. But then far and away the best movie that I have covered, I believe on the same day as Enough Said in Insidious Chapter 2, we had Prisoners, which is a banger of a movie. It stars Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano, Terrence Howard, Denis Villeneuve directing. Guys, if you haven't seen Prisoners, you have to see this one. This is one of the best films of the 2010s. In hindsight, it's got to be one of my favorite thriller movies ever because it's a story that you can instantly gravitate toward with the dad and the detective because it's just good people who kind of do shady things for the sake of the greater good. I think that it's Hugh Jackman's greatest role to date. I know he didn't get nominated for this one. I believe he got nominated for Les Mis the year before. I know that he's great in Logan, but to me, this is the best Hugh Jackman performance because he had to go to a place that he never has to go to for his movies. For me, Jake Gyllenhaal has always been an amazing actor, but this kind of unlocked something for me with what he can do in a supporting role in a film. And man, I would just love to see Denis Villeneuve tackle a thriller like this again. I mean, for sure, Denis, if you're watching this, you aren't, but if you're watching this, take your time with Dune. I love Dune so much more. I just love Dune in general. I love it more than a lot of movies, but I would love to see Denis Villeneuve lend his hand to a thriller again because this movie is just incredible. Again, you guys, if you haven't seen Prisoners, it's gonna take some build up to watch it. Trust me, it's not an easy film to watch, but it's worth it. It's just so good. It is true cinema. All right, then following that up, we have Rush, the movie about the rivalry between James Hunt and Niki Lauda back in the old school F1 days. And it covers the time period as well whenever Niki Lauda suffered his horrible injury that permanently scarred his face and his comeback to F1. Now, personally, I'm a huge fan of F1. I do my best to watch every single race. It's something that I got into like many other people with Drive to Survive coming out a few years ago, and I've just dove into the sport. Whenever this movie came out, I wasn't into F1 at the time. I really didn't know anything about the sport. I had no idea who James Hunt or Niki Lauda was, but I just loved this movie from the moment I saw it. I've rewatched it a few times since then, and to this day, it's gotta be my favorite racing film out there. I really haven't found, or at least racing film about F1, I haven't found a racing film that has captured the magic that this one has. Directed by Ron Howard, who's been in the industry for longer than I've been alive. He is just a legend. He has some hits, has some misses. This is for sure a hit for him. You have Chris Hemsworth in probably his best role outside of the MCU for me. And then Daniel Bruhl got nominated for a ton of stuff here playing Niki Lauda, and he is truly excellent in this film too. This is one of those where I always seem to see it on Netflix, so I'm assuming it's on there right now. If you have the opportunity, please treat yourself and watch this film. Even if you're not into racing, it's just a great, gripping film about real people. All right, then we have some lighthearted fare here with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, and the original Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is one of my favorite animated movies ever. It was directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who, if you don't know those guys, they would later go on to do the 21 Jump Street films. They did the Lego movie. They started Solo before they got fired. But most recently, they've been known for producing, and I don't think they directed, but they definitely produced the Spider-Verse films. And these guys are just so imaginative. They're so random, but somehow their movies seem to make sense. They didn't go on to direct Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. They did produce it. I wish they had come back for this sequel, but nonetheless, it's still a really fun movie to watch. All right, and then rounding out September of 2013, we have Don John, which was the directorial debut for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Also starring him and starring Julianne Moore as well as Scarlett Johansson, this movie follows kind of a womanizer who finds himself starting to fall in love with a woman, except he cannot fight an addiction he has to something that I can't say on the internet, but it's corn? Yeah, he's actively fighting an addiction in the movie while also falling in love and just kind of dealing with, repressing certain feelings that he has because he really cares about a girl. And this movie is such a different romantic comedy. It's not one that would instantly appeal to people if they know the premise, obviously. I think it made about $70 million in the box office, so it was by no stretch of the imagination a blockbuster, but this movie is really slept on, and it's actually really damn good, and it has a really fantastic message, and I don't remember a ton of stuff about this movie. I saw it whenever it came out. I haven't rewatched it since, but I cannot forget the ending of this movie and just how truly earnest and heartfelt it is, excuse me. It's a surprisingly really great movie, and I'm surprised that Joseph Gordon-Levitt hasn't directed another movie since then. I know he directed some sort of mini-series for Apple TV that I'd never heard of before researching for this video, but he was great in the movie as the lead character. He showed that he is a good director, and man, this movie really surprises me. If, it's something that interests you, I'm telling you right now that it's worth your time. It's funny too, but it also is very heartfelt and different than anything else out there. But that's it, you guys. That is my breakdown of the movies released 10 years ago in September 2013. Are there any movies on this list that you forgot about that maybe you love? Maybe movies that you want to revisit right now? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more if you aren't already. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.